Okay, we're rolling.
All right, this is an interview at the New York State Military Museum, Saratoga Springs, New York. It is the 14th of December, 2007, approximately 10 a.m. Interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you give me your full name and date of birth and place of birth, please?
The name is James H. Mee, M-E-E. My birth date is January 7th, 1926.
And where? Were you
Born in Binghamton, New York.
Okay. What was your educational background prior to entering service?
I finished 11th grade in high school. Went into the service, and when I came out, went back to high school, finished up.
Okay. Do you remember where you were when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
Yes, I do. I was playing poker in my mother's kitchen.
She allowed gambling in the house on Sunday.
With another group of 17-year-olds.
Mm-hmm. How did you hear about it?
My father came out and told us
Mm-hmm.
to break up the game. The war started.
Did you know where Pearl Harbor
I
was?
had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
No idea.
Most people didn't.
No. But when I finally got there, it was pretty.
How did, all of you were 17, 18-year-olds, how did you feel about this when you heard about it?
You couldn't wait. You could not wait to get into the service.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't know what it was all about. I mean, most of us had probably never handled a gun, if we had ever seen any at that time. But we
Now, did you enlist or were you drafted?
enlisted. Yeah. I enlisted, but I had to be accepted as a draftee because they had so many enlistees.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Why did you decide to enlist?
The Marine Corps?
Yeah, yes.
Hey, man, that's where the men went.
Okay. Did you, where did most of your friends go when they enlisted?
Just about every branch of the service. I have friends, yeah.
Did anyone enlist with you for the Marine Corps? Or?
No, I went alone. I did meet some boys from down Binghamton on the train on the way down to Pearl Harbor, or to Camp Lejeune.
That's where you went for your basic?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Parris Island. Parris Island, yeah.
Okay. Was this the first time you were away from home?
Yeah, roughly I'd say yes. Yeah.
How did you feel about being away from home? And
Actually, you were too busy to miss home at that time. Everything was hurry, hurry, hurry. You ran to the rifle range, you ran back. Every place you went, you ran because they needed your bunk for the next group coming in. So they were really pushing us through the boot camp very darn fast.
how long were you at Parris Island?
About 5 weeks, I think. Right in the neighborhood of 5 weeks.
And did you go for any other training beyond Parris Island?
I went from Parris Island to Camp Lejeune. To Camp Lejeune, they put me into telephone communications. And I went to had a 3-week school. And then they shipped me out to San Diego. Next thing I know, I was with the first.
Looking back, do you think your training was adequate?
Yeah, I think it was. I knew what I was doing. I could perform my job with what they had taught me. We were in a hurry, you know. So the regular week at the regular course for radio telephone communications was 12 weeks when I went down there, but they did not have that kind of time.
When you left from San Diego, did you go in a convoy or a single ship?
We were in a very small convoy.
And where did you go?
To the island of Kauai in the Hawaiians.
Now you got to see Pearl Harbor?
Got to sail right through Pearl Harbor, yeah.
And what, you told us, what did you think of Pearl Harbor when you went through it?
Well, it was a pretty touching moment when you saw the damage, the ships half in and half out of the water. I guess kind of fired you up. You want to go get those damn Japs.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. It was a sneak attack. But, it was probably the biggest motivator that you could imagine, you know, for a bunch of kids. Well, and most of us were 17, 18 years old. And very few that went in the contingent I was with that would be more than their 20s, you know.
Where did you go from Pearl Harbor?
From Pearl Harbor, I went to the island of Kauai.
Okay, you said that.
In Kauai, they trained us for telephone communications. Then we took off.
How long was that school or that training?
I think it was about 3 weeks, as I recall.
Where did you go from after you left Hawaii?
From Kauai, I went over to the Big Island and joined up with the 1st Division.
About what time period was this?
Probably March, April '44.
So where did you go after the division joined up?
Well, we had quite a training session on Kauai, and then after Kauai, I went to Peleliu for a couple of weeks. And Peleliu, and then we did quite a bit of setting up campsite or living quarters for following contingents to come through. And I'm trying to think of the name of the island. Awful. We got in a convoy, quite a large convoy, and we sailed and sailed and sailed. I guess Guam would be the next place we stopped. By the time we got to Guam, that was pretty much over. So they just saved us for what was to come.
Now you were on Iwo Jima?
No, I saw Iwo Jima.
Okay.
I was never on Iwo Jima.
Oh, okay.
I sailed by Iwo Jima. It was kind of a, well, I don't know, we thought at the time what they were trying to do was give us a little shot in the arm to see what had happened, you know, and fire you up for what was to come.
So your first combat experience was Okinawa then?
Yeah.
Were you on the first wave or?
No, it was about the 3rd wave.
Could you describe what you saw? You must have seen the bombardment then.
Well, there was
or heard it anyhow.
I wouldn't even venture to guess how many ships sitting out there that were bombing. Planes bombing, and I'd say well into the thousands of men going in, and the LCVPs.
What kind of craft did you go in on?
LCVP.
Could you talk about your trip into the beach?
Yeah. Well, and of course you had LCTs and LSTs and bringing tanks in, and just well, too big to describe.
Was there a lot of confusion going on?
I don't think there was any confusion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course, I'm a BA private. I I certainly wasn't in any position to contradict the guys who were running the show.
Mhm.
But, no, everything seemed to, everybody knew where they were supposed to go,
Everyone
what boat
stayed
you're gonna
together.
get into, and what you're gonna
Mhm.
do, where you're gonna land, because somehow these guys got in there and had spots marked on the beach.
Mhm.
Now, how they did it, I don't know, honestly, but we get into the LCVPs and LCTs, and they would, and a lot of us did, because we didn't have that many tanks to land. A lot of us did go in LCTs. And when you hit the beach, there were signs, who placed them, I have no idea. But there were signs there when, where we were to go. I mean, it was everything but a bus to take us. And then you met up with a bunch of strangers who were getting the same directions you were, and God knows how they did it. But well, we just I went into the first signal company, first Marine Corps, or first division, and I spent the rest of my time with them.
What was your job when you arrived on the beach and you found out where you were supposed to go? Basically, what did you do from there?
Well, first of all, they put the radio on the back of two of us, with more than two of us, but paired us off. Put a radio on your back, two radio talkers told us where to go, one each, and we just went on in there using the radios. And
How heavy was
how
heavy was the radio you were carrying?
I'm probably 70, 75 pounds, something like that.
And you carried a rifle too?
Pardon me?
Did you carry a rifle
Carrying
too?
a rifle, your bayonet and a scabbard, and well, like with us, we were carrying. We worked in pairs.
Mhm.
Two of us were carrying a radio or a telephone switchboard between us, field phones, and I think we each had 3 or 4 EE8 telephones. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many hundreds of us who were doing it at the same time.
And did you have to carry like spools of wire too?
Well,
for the
our
phones?
tools and wire fit in a little holster. And that, well, the wire was what I was saying on the drum that we carried between us.
Oh, okay.
There was a half a mile of wire. And by the time we ran out of that one, there was another one laying on the ground.
Be-
So
be-
we just pulled the carrying bar out, put it in the next one, and tied them together. Came back maybe a week or two later and taped up the splices. But
Mhm.
you weren't going to stop, or they'd run right over you. You know?
Yeah. Being that you were carrying the radio, did you come under any kind of direct fire?
Excuse me.
I don't think so. No, no, I don't. At the time, well, the Japanese were out in front of us,
Mm-hmm.
so they didn't know what we were carrying. I don't think. Maybe they did. But no, it was the biggest problem with the radios were they got heavy. You know,
Mhm.
and you
Yeah.
ended up with rope burns on your shoulders and bruises on your back, and that thing bouncing.
Yeah. Were you carrying rations too? Food?
No,
No.
no. Rations they dropped by air. I don't know if they did this for everybody or not, but we had a canteen full of water,
Mm-hmm.
and that was it. And periodically they set up a little kitchen. So I mean, after before the first day was over, they had kitchens set up, coffee. When you were given permission from your officers, you could go for coffee. I mean, to make sure everybody got their share and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you stay in one place, or did you continually move behind the front?
Well, we were in communications,
Mm-hmm.
so needless to say, we didn't stay long in one place.
Mhm.
We just, I think very, very few days after they set up kitchens, very few days did we eat with the same people twice. very astute.
Mhm.
I mean, that was our job. We were running all the time.
Mhm. Now, how close to the front would you say you were?
Well, close enough that 3 of my friends got killed.
Did you ever encounter the Japanese at all yourself? Or?
Yeah? Put their hands up over their heads. That's the first ones I saw. I don't think I was ever shot at, to the best of my knowledge. I was never hit, so I really don't care what else happened there.
How would you,
Did a lot of them surrender?
Oh, yeah.
how about your equipment? How would you, did it work pretty well? You ever have any problems with
I
it?
think, you know, I don't know if you're familiar with the EE8 telephone.
No.
They were as good as the splices you made,
Mhm.
and how well you turned them into the telephone. It was a telephone with its electronics in a little leather case, looked like a lady's pocketbook, a little bit larger. And there was a spot where, if you were fortunate and got somebody had the connector on the end of the wire, you could just plug it in. But for most part, we had to turn it down into the little thumb screws.
Mhm.
Radio, I think, was more of during an assault by the radio, the radio was a much better tool as far as communications. We had telephones, we had radios, and we just distributed them where we were told. Because most of us were 17, 18-year-old kids.
Were you ever really scared, do you think?
Scared to death. Sure. I mean, when you don't know who's there, you don't know where they are. Just,
Mhm.
and these Japanese were well hidden. They had their little bunkers all built up. Thank God for some of those old sergeants we had, because I don't know if they'd ever been in combat before, but they certainly, they knew their ropes, and they kept us on our toes. And we had very, very few losses.
Now, how long were you on Okinawa?
Well, from D-Day until, I was there, I was there better than a year. After they took the island away, we even had liberty on Okinawa.
What did you do for entertainment?
Went into the little towns. They were all sugar plantations.
Mhm.
The biggest business they had. And they had 2 or 3 towns. They looked like something out of a Western movie with the wagons and the horses. And the people there were mostly Hawaiians who were on our side. They were
Mhm.
Americans just like us. They treated us very well.
What about tropical diseases? Any problem with that, like malaria or dengue fever? Or?
Jungle fever we kept hearing about. I don't know what it was.
Mhm.
We had a few people got malaria. I had malaria, but it was a pretty minor thing.
Mhm.
You did a lot of vomiting and just like a stomach upset that didn't go away until we got enough of the I can't think of the name of the stuff.
Adabrin?
Adabrin, yeah.
Right.
Adabrin, and there was something they injected. I can't remember what it was now. But and it wasn't as bad as people think it was.
Mhm. Now, you were on Okinawa then during the typhoon.
Yeah.
What was that like?
That was something else. That was worse than the battle.
In what ways?
Well, I mean, you couldn't keep, we were living in tents.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't keep a tent up. I mean, they were just carried away in a lot of cases. So it was scary because trees were falling. Of course, they had coconut trees, and they get to shaking, and those coconuts were like young bombs coming down on you. But the farmers, and there were farmers on Okinawa, and God, they took good care of us.
Mm-hmm.
They had a couple little towns there that looked like something out of a cowboy movie. And the best place in the world for a 17-year-old to buy a drink, you know.
Did you eat any of the local foods?
Oh yeah. They quite often you'd be invited to eat with the people. After the first week or two, we started getting liberty, and there wasn't many places to go. But you go into the towns, and the people would invite you into the restaurants, or people would invite you to go to their homes. You know, there were Americans too. You know, just
Mm-hmm.
and it was something to remember.
Now, were you able to see the kamikaze attacks on the ships at all from where you were?
Yeah. Well, not only on the ships, they made them on land.
Yeah,
on the
true.
land too, yeah. Yeah, we could see them.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we had, that's what our radar was doing the same thing. We were scanning all the time.
Oh, so you had a radar unit with you too?
We had a radar, you know.
Oh, okay. Now, were you on Okinawa when President Roosevelt died? You must have been.
Geez, I honestly can't tell.
I was wondering if you recalled.
One day we were notified that the priests were going to have an extra mass, and the ministers were going to have an extra what do you call it?
The service.
Service, yeah. And it would be because of Roosevelt's death, but it was pretty quiet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think everybody felt badly about it, but they didn't know what we were getting in that new guy.
Yeah. Were you there when the atomic bombs were dropped?
Yeah, I was on the island. I didn't know anything about
Mm-hmm.
the atomic bomb. Of course,
Right.
We probably saw the plane, but we wouldn't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What was the reaction when the war ended? You must have been there.
Damn. No, we'd had enough. Myself, I didn't have it bad at all. I mean, I just, but we were certainly glad to have it over.
Now, you were assigned to China next? When did you go to China?
Well, we got to China, and first thing they did was set us up in a Japanese temple or fortress. And the second thing they did was tell us to report to my little group to report to I hate to say this, but a lieutenant who was younger than some of us, and he led us up. He had 2 trucks, and they hauled us up into probably 500-600 miles up over, and we met the Russian who were laying wire back to us, and we laid wire out, and we tied out in the middle of that desert someplace. I wouldn't have any idea what the actual location was, but so we did have communication with the Russian people by telephone.
Do you have any encounters with the Russians? You meet the Russian army, or
We met them where we tied in with them, and they were just like us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they didn't know why they were there. We didn't know why we were there, except let's tie these wires together and go home.
Mm-hmm. Now, the fighting between the Chinese that started about this time. Were you involved in that at all?
No. We were particularly told stay out, and I believe this was told from the top right all the way down.
Was there any time that your wires were cut at all, or?
Oh, there were times the wire would be cut. Yeah, we didn't know whether it was a tank ran over it or.
Mm-hmm. Now, how long were you in China?
Overall, I guess 14, 15 months.
Did you enjoy your stay in China?
Well, yeah, I enjoyed it. It was totally different than what American kids were used to, and it just the food was great, and the Chinese treated us wonderfully. Just and we could buy booze, which we were too young to buy anyplace else. So.
Were you in any of the big cities like Shanghai or Beijing?
I went to Beijing, yeah. I was quartered in Beijing, Peking. Excuse me.
Yeah, at the time.
Back in the old days. We were quartered there with our company while we were putting in the communications. And from there, they, as I say, they trucked us out to meet the Russians, and which was probably about a 1,500-mile trek, both for them and for us to meet, and set up connected communications.
Well, you said one of the amusing things that happened while you were there, you had a sergeant from Alabama that spoke Russian?
Yeah, with an Alabama accent. He was nobody could understand him. English or English or whatever the hell he was speaking. He was just he was all by himself. Yeah.
Now you had something with. Now, did you have that made, or did you find that in a shop, or?
No, that was given to me by a Chinese couple.
I would say, what woman's jacket?
The size of it, I don't know as well be really a woman, but see, that was given to us while in China.
Now you sent that home to your mother, you said?
I sent it home. Yeah, I had my sister was having, or had, I can't remember if she just was having or had her daughter, and as soon as I got it, I just packed it up, sent it on home. And I think she wore it for a while. I think, of course, she outgrew it.
Now, when did you leave China?
45, 46 must have been very early 46. January, February. So it's been January.
How did you return home, by ship or plane? Did your whole unit return together, or?
No, because
Small
we
groups.
had replacements come in. But they were quite a. Well, our whole wire company went. I believe the whole company went back at one time. Not necessarily on the same ships, but.
Now, when you reached the States, were you discharged immediately, or did you spend more time in the service?
No, they were in a hurry to get us out, truthfully. They had apparently they had so many enlistees on the waiting list, and they had no places to put them. That I think anybody that had 2 years overseas, I won't say everybody, but a good share of us were two years or somewhat over 2 years overseas. And they seemed to be the ones that weren't. Of course, when you're talking 3 Marine divisions, it's spread over a country the size of China, it's hard to tell what all's going on. You know? But it was a wonderful experience.
After you left the service, did you use the GI Bill at all?
Yes, I did. I went to school for, well, I started taking, I finished high school. I started taking some college courses. Went to Bliss Electrical School, which set me up as my career for life.
What was that?
Electricity.
Did you have an interest in that before you went in the service?
Yes, I did.
Mhm.
My brother was an electrician, and he was probably the best electrician in Binghamton, New York, for what everybody said, and I just thought I wanted to follow in his footsteps. He was, so what, 22 years older than I was? 24 years older. I have go into my reference library.
Yes, I saw that. Did you join any veterans organizations at all?
Yeah, I belonged to the VFW, and of course the Legion, which was very active in my hometown, Binghamton, New York. Both were very active, and well, I guess stayed right in them until after we got married. We started raising our own little army, so we didn't have time for things like that anymore.
Have you rejoined at all, or?
Yeah.
Did you join the Marine Corps League at all? Or
Yeah, I
Marine
did
Corps?
belong to the Marine Corps League for a while. My mother belonged to the Marine Corps League. They had a unit for the parents, and so my mother joined the Marine Corps League.
Did you ever stay in contact with anyone that was in service with you?
Yeah, I did. For quite a while, a fellow named Bill Beck, who was, well, Bill was probably 12 to 13 years older, and he was almost like a father figure to the 18-year-olds, 17, 18-year-olds. He kept us out of trouble. And we kept in touch with him until we heard that he died.
Do you have any other stories that you remember that maybe you want to mention?
No, I wouldn't want my wife to hear him.
Oh, okay. Just step out of the room. How do you think your time in the Marine Corps or in the service had an effect on your life?
Well, I don't know if it really affected my life, but it certainly affected my feelings.
In what ways?
Well, I learned to take orders, which pretty tough on a 17-year-old kid. And I'm still doing it. I'm still taking orders.
Okay.
No, I think it was certainly a growing experience. You know, you got put in with grown men. Like this, they say this Bill Beck was 31 years old.
He must have been the
Or
old guy.
17 years
Yeah.
old, you know. And, I mean, he kept us out of more trouble. And he fathered us, you know, just, and it was, until we heard that he died, we kept pretty close contact with him over the years. And then there were all ages in between, of course, and a few younger later on.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your interview.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, we're rolling.
You know, you mentioned you had experiences with the Navajo with your radios. Could you talk about that?
Yes, they were our radio talkers, because at the time the popular belief, if not the actual belief, was that nobody but a Navajo could speak or understand the Navajo language. And we had two young fellows with us that were Navajos, came off the reservation to go into the Marine Corps. And they, needless to say, were our code talkers. And apparently, throughout the 1st Division, we had more, because they had to talk to somebody, and we never found out who. But they were the two that I knew were exceptionally bright boys.
Mhm.
They could speak the Navajo, and they could speak English as well as any other 18-year-old in the group, you know, just
Now, did they have an officer overseeing them, like in the movie?
Yeah, they had an officer overseeing. Well, with us, they had an officer, which I never saw him.
Mhm.
They had an officer that they reported to. We had a sergeant and 2 corporals. They got rated much faster than the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
And who the officer was, apparently he was with Division headquarters. And this young sergeant was he was the group leader and kind of the father figure for these other 2 kids that were his age, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The Marine Corps just seemed to be full of teenagers at that time. There weren't too many older troops there, but once in a while.
Now, did these 2 Navajos stay with the rest of the guys in the unit, or were they kind of separate?
They had their own tent.
Mhm.
Okay, when we were living in tents, they had their own tent because that's where they had their equipment.
Oh, they had their own equipment.
They had their own radios and so on and so forth. And well, if they didn't, they had to be able to speak only to the other Navajos that they with the other companies or battalions. And apparently the feeling was that if they were just on the regular radio network, they were available to having anything they had to say stolen, you know, just and they for the most part were a very bright bunch of boys, and but they were truly loners. They didn't, just one that I knew that really mixed. And occasionally when we would get a little beer, why, they would not touch it. They would none of them would touch it. That was really the shining light at that time, you know, the thing that made the biggest impression on us.
Okay, well, thank you.
My pleasure.